What up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Nerd Gen Report. I'm your host, Pablo, and joining me, as always, is Mr. Brian Schultz. The Void. A lot of interesting things to discuss today on The Void. Yeah, we got Dawn of the Jedi, and it's unfortunate, and it's just like, this is going to be really bad. But we'll see. Terrence Howard, we all thought that it was about pay, but it seemed like it was a little bit more than that. Denzel keeps on chugging along, doing some movies. Hannibal, Arnold, talking about, they're trying to milk him like they did Sylvester Stallone. And we got all those movies, these other sequels that we were like, okay, this is enough. But I don't know what he's going to be doing in them. But we'll see. And what we're watching, Brian saw War Machine with Alan Ritchson. He had posted something, and I wrote, he had posted something about this movie, and I wrote in his feed, the best Batman that never was. It got 800 and something likes, yo.
He might have been one of them. He was out there saying he'd love to do it. And then, as we said the other day, if you wanted adult He-Man, he's probably one of the only actors out there who could pull that off too. So,
yeah. But yeah, let's get started with Dawn of the Jedi is no longer. Brian, what have you heard about this?
Speaking of the best that never was, this is awesome. So 2 years ago, Star Wars Celebration in London, the source of one of our most entertaining shows. That's the presentation which Kathleen Kennedy was supposed to basically announce her retirement, and instead announced 3 projects that day, including trotting Daisy Ridley out on stage. What's interesting is, of the 3 projects, not one of them, it seems, will ever make it to the big screen. So the first thing that she announced was obviously that Charmin Obaid-Chinoy New Jedi Order with Rey. That's also, as she said in her exit interviews, didn't even mention it, like that it exists anymore. Yeah. So that seems like it's gone. The second was a Dave Filoni verse culmination show for all the Mando, Ahsoka, all those. That was supposed to be a film at the end, a version of Heir to the Empire. And then the third was Dawn of the Jedi with James Mangold directing and Beau Willimon of Andor and House of Cards fame writing. And Kennedy in her exit interview made it clear she thought Dawn of the Jedi was exciting, had a lot of potential, but pointed the finger squarely at Bob Iger and Alan Bergman, saying the studio basically is not brave enough to greenlight this.
They know what comes with that, Brian. What did I say?
If they did, it would. And now Kathleen Kennedy has moved on. Dave Filoni is officially in the chair, and the latest scoop from Jeff Schneider is the movie is dead. That Mangold is focused on other things, including maybe Swamp Thing, maybe a Timothée Chalamet movie, and then that Dave Filoni himself is apparently on board with deep sixing this project and getting rid of it.
Of course. What did I say about this? They are afraid of having to follow the rules based on that movie, because it would be the 10 Commandments pretty much. And they don't want to do that. They don't want to be handcuffed to that philosophy or whatever it is that they were going to introduce in that Dawn of the Jedi film. And it's a shame because that, I think, is very interesting. I think people will turn out for that, to see the sort of abilities one would get at that early stage of wielding that sort of power, right? So again, it's unfortunate that we're not going to be able to see that. And what did Rocky say to Adrian in Rocky 3?
I'm afraid! All right? You want to hear me say it? You want to break me down? All right, I'm afraid.
Want to break me down? You want to hear me say it?
That's what it is. But
I agree. I agree. This is the conundrum of Star Wars, is that right when they get, like, 9 times out of 10, and Andor is the 10th, 9 times out of 10, when they get to the verge of breaking out of the mold, they retreat. And an idea like, this is the other analogy would be like, it's the equivalent of the Lawrence Fishburne and Man of Steel. Do you know how people would react if they knew something like this was out there? It is that kind of idea where it's like, it charts all sorts of possibilities, but it probably could be highly controversial as well. And it's like, Dave Filoni is Mr. Canon. He's like Mr. IP. And it's like, he if one of his first acts is to formally kill this project, it kind of says a lot, I think, about what sort of Star Wars we're looking for from him. And that he's, as I said, I had no problem if Andor wasn't his favorite show. Where I would start to have a problem is if he couldn't recognize its value to the franchise. And if you kill a project like this, it makes me ask questions about your ability to discern what is valuable to the franchise. Because I don't know, in the ideas we've been presented Star Wars-wise since Rise of Skywalker, other than Andor and its execution, I don't know that we've seen a better idea than this.
Yeah. When that was first mentioned, my ears just like perked up. Because that's interesting. The dawn of the Jedi? Are you kidding me?
And that was his pitch. Literally was like, he's like the 1960 biblical epics, like Ben-Hur and the 10 Commandments. He's like, I want to do that for Star Wars. I'm like, there's the Mickey.
What are we waiting for?
There it is right there. What are we waiting for? And yet what we find out is what we're waiting for is they don't want to take that chance. Because I think you're right. I think it's like, if he executed that. And Mangold, like, the thing about, I think of James Mangold as a really high floor director. Like, very rarely does he make a bad movie. Even something like Dial of Destiny, which didn't make money, I think if you watch it on just as its own thing, you're like, this is actually a well-made movie. It's just Harrison Ford at 80 is not really like, it's hard to do.
Yeah.
But, Ford versus Ferrari, like another good example, Walk the Line. Like, this guy makes good movies. And you're like, if he makes a good version of this, like, that's dangerous. Like, it is dangerous.
Absolutely.
Very disappointing.
Unfortunate. Terrence Howard tells the reason perhaps he did not come back for Iron Man 2. What has been revealed, Brian?
So what we knew, the facts that we knew were that he was paid more than Robert Downey in the first one, given where Downey's career was. And that in the second one, he was asked to take a pay cut. Obviously, the tables had turned a little bit. Downey explodes, and he's the main character. Obviously, it kind of makes sense. And then the public version of it was, at the time, was kind of like Howard scoffed at taking the pay cut, so they replaced him with Don Cheadle, and the rest is history. But we do also know, and Howard himself validates this, the idea that he's kind of one of those prickly actors, like one of those guys that ruffles feathers and makes for difficult sets sometimes, despite his talent. And so he references on a podcast an old confrontation with producer Joel Silver, notably of Matrix, Lethal Weapon, those type of movies, where he's talking about a totally different movie, but it has a Marvel connection. So he's talking about The Brave One, in which Jodie Foster played a vigilante writer. Mm-hmm. But one of the producers on said movie was Susan Downey, Robert Downey's wife. Terrence Howard says he was asked by a reporter why he did not receive the same billing as Jodie Foster. And so he apparently confronted Joel Silver about that, to which Joel Silver said, well, the reason your name, this is a quote, from Howard, quoting Silver. So the reason your name isn't above the titles is because you're not the star of this thing. It's Jodie. And if you get nominated for an Oscar, it's going to be supporting actor, not best actor. To which Terrence Howard reportedly said, thank you for telling me that. Now I understand. But you have to remember, I'm a man just like you. And if you ever talk to me in that way again, I'm going to knock your teeth out of your mouth, end quote. And he says, 8 months later, I lose Iron Man. I'm sure all those things played a part.
Yeah. Yeah. And he admits to, being
Yeah.
one not to back down from tones that don't suit his receptors, right?
Yep.
But it's a good thing that he sort of recognizes that. And even Denzel, he spoke of Denzel talking to him and
Yep.
telling him, you got to let go of some of this stuff is, and I understand that part of it as well.
There's a subplot to this which I was not aware of, and quite honestly, I kind of disagree with, which is there's a little subplot note in here saying that Jon Favreau did not like Terrence Howard's rendition of Rhodey in Iron Man 1. That was also, so even though they offered him to come back and Favreau was directing Iron Man 2, they didn't like the interpretation. I don't remember feeling that way at the time. I don't remember having a huge problem with Terrence Howard's portrayal of the character coming off that movie. It's nothing against Don Cheadle, but like I never felt like Howard stuck out in the wrong ways in that film. Did you like how do you remember like his performance? And I guess if he had not been replaced, so if we carry forward everything we know about Cheadle's roles, the scripting, and yes, include the whole Skrulls thing too in Secret Invasion. Include that whole and say that's Terrence Howard all the way through. Same, better, worse? Like, where do you think we are with regard to the Rhodey character?
I think Terrence Howard, one, is a great actor. I like his performances. There was one movie he did. Damn, that he's a coach for a swimming team, a recreation team. I forget what it was called. And I enjoyed that very much. Sorry, I don't know the name. I'll probably find it, put it up later. But I think it would have been still a good performance, and we would have grown like we did with everyone else in the cast. The only thing that bothered me about Terrence Howard was when he was calling out his name when he was looking for him. Tony! Tony! That was driving me crazy.
Maybe that's what Jon Favreau didn't like. Didn't like the voice. The thing that's funny, like, I thought Cheadle had played the character very earnest as the sidekick. Not a ton of humor, like, but very, like, almost loyal to a fault. Kind of like, I'm always, like, really with Tony. I'm always the understanding kind of. Whereas Howard definitely had a little more edge to his character. There was a little more fiery energy to that character, and that's what I was trying to debate. Like when, and I think of the quintessential version of that is when he says, "Next time, baby." Like the way he says that, and you try to imagine what he would have then brought to putting on the suit and being War Machine and all. I don't know. Like I think it could have been.
I think it would have been dope.
I think it would have worked. My only question is there a point at which, and this is maybe art imitating life, at which like, could you have a Rhodey who had that much charisma and steam opposite tone? Like, would they start to compete with each other? Because I think Cheadle does a very good job of complementing, but never overshadowing Downey, right? Anytime they're in scenes together.
I think it would have been the case of whether or not Terrence Howard would have gotten in the way of his own self. But I think the performances would have still been as compelling, if not more, between them. The dynamic would have been different, I think.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Because of Howard's performance. I still think, like, for me, that first iteration of Rhodey was the best. I didn't quite like too much Don Cheadle's iteration. I think he got a little bit too wanting to be too funny in some of these, and he just didn't work for me. But yeah, it's a shame that he didn't get to come back, because I think he would have again be one of those characters that everyone would have sort of grown up watching all the way up until Avengers or wherever they got up to Endgame. You know what I'm saying? So it's a shame that he got replaced.
It's not as high profile as what happened to Ed Norton, but it's like, it is one of those, like, when this story came out, I think it does make you reflect on the what if of like that role. And Avengers became it had its stars, but it is an ensemble. And so everyone kind of had a part to play. And I started thinking through all these little scenes in Civil War when he gets injured, and even in like an Endgame when he's on the hologram and it's like him and Captain Marvel. It's like imagining Terrence Howard's style in that versus Don Cheadle. And neither is bad, but they are different, and it makes it a little different, And whereas I think it's interesting. Like I feel like as time has gone on, and I don't begrudge Kevin Feige and Disney and Marvel specifically feeling the way they did about Norton, given everything we know about how Norton acted. But I mean, I do increasingly find myself wishing that Norton could have swallowed his own pride, because I do think he was better. Like as we've gone on, I know at the time Ruffalo, when he came on the scene, people found it like a breath of fresh air. But I think the Norton performance has aged very well, whereas obviously the Ruffalo Hulk has gone in all sorts of directions we want back. To where like that's one where I feel like I think had Norton been in that ensemble, and if he could have actually been more like, for example, Italian Job Ed Norton, where he's like one of the guys, even though he's the bad guy, I actually think we might have been better off than where we actually got to. This one, I'm not as sure. I think it's more different, but it's interesting. It's interesting comment.
Denzel Washington. He is going to be doing this. Confirmed that he's doing Hannibal.
So the fascinating thing about this movie, this has been attached to Denzel Washington, I estimate, for maybe 20 years. This is his. I feel like every actor has has a character that they have always wanted to play. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Mm-hmm. This has been the historical figure Denzel has always seemingly wanted to play, the Carthaginian general Hannibal. I remember there was a version of this that was being geared up to almost be like a 300 style, like animation, where he was going to be, motion captured. There was several live action versions of this that never happened. But now all of a sudden they're saying Antoine Fuqua, his Training Day and Equalizer director, with the writer of Gladiator and Skyfall, John Logan, are actually set to film this project as of June out of nowhere. Wow. And so seemingly this has gone from 0 to 100. And they also have the cinematographer Robert Ritchson, who's won multiple Oscars. He was cinematographer on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, JFK, Casino. So this is all of a sudden a big, big deal. But there's one big caveat, and you texted it to me, which is...
What did I say?
Is he going to actually play another character, or is he simply going to be...
Denzel? And that's... that's the problem for me. If Denzel's going to be Denzel, then I'm out. I'll watch it. But if it's going to be Denzel being Denzel, nope. I'm not going to take it seriously. I'm not going to take his performance seriously. And and no disrespect to him, but you want to sort of imagine the character being this Hannibal guy and not seeing just Denzel. You know what I'm saying?
Well, this is also a character where that will stick out worse than what Joaquin did with Napoleon, in the sense of this guy is, by all accounts, one of the greatest military leaders in history. He won improbable victories against the Romans at multiple points. He then has his version of Waterloo where he's eventually defeated. But this is one of those things that should be kind of epic in scale. You're talking about going to war with elephants and large scale armies and, battles on land and on the sea. Like, you can't kind of do the same. You can't be your character from the Equalizer. And you can't do the Macronist thing from Gladiator 2. Like, that didn't really work. And if you're going to do this with one of the legendary African military figures in history, I don't think that's gonna sit well. So this feels like a real risk if he's gonna do it. But yeah, I don't know. And I gotta be honest, Fuqua to me, who obviously is gonna be directing, this is gonna come up, by the way, because Michael's coming out in a few weeks. And someone now is gonna be asking Antoine.
Coming
Fuqua
out in a few weeks?
No, I'm saying the Michael Jackson biopic coming out in April, right?
Oh, okay, that's right.
So I'm saying Antoine Fuqua as a director now is gonna get asked about this. Yes. They're like, are you really going to go shoot a Denzel Hannibal movie 2 months from now? And I'll be fascinated to see what he says, because when I see what else he's done with Denzel. Equalizer versus Training Day. But then most notably to me, they did this Magnificent Seven remake, which I don't think is that good. And I don't think Denzel's that good in it as a cowboy. And that's the thing that has me concerned, where it's like he's trying to play like a 19th century gunslinger, and it's like he's doing
Yeah,
that's the challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm interested in the concept. Like if you just said like, here are the names, but like honestly, of those names, I'm most nervous about the legend himself, playing it.
Speaking of people playing the same guy.
Yeah.
Arnold has been asked to return to do Predator, Commando, and Conan. What did I say earlier? Milk? They're milking as much as they can out of this. Predator, it makes a little bit more sense. I would be interested to see him in Predator, to see what his thoughts and what he has to say. Because after that day that he was picked up, the last shot of him was in the helicopter in silence. Hasn't spoken since. What he has to say after that, I'm interested to see what he has to say if they have to go against another Predator, and that'll be interesting to me. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think these are very different propositions, right? So he's 78. There's been off and on talk of Conan in particular, that they've been trying to get that resurrected for decades now. And again, that relates to the last shot of Conan the Barbarian shows an old Conan sitting on the throne. And that's always been the entry point for like the one last adventure. But let's start with Predator, because it is far and away the most, and let's be honest, it's interesting because Dan Trachtenberg has completely revitalized the IP to the point where he got Arnold's permission to use an animated image of Dutch in cryostasis at the end of Killer of Killers. But that apparently led to a more full-fledged conversation about actually bringing Dutch back in live action form, presumably in his old age, not in the cryo, which was in his primal life. I am with you in the sense that, look, if you're going to ask him to go back in the jungle and do what he did in Predator 1, it's not going to work. But I also don't think Trachtenberg is dumb enough to ask him to do that. There is something here with, I don't know if it's like the traumatic experience of that, like that he's lived with that and he has to kind of confront it, but not really be the sole fighter of the creature. It's like a longer gestating version of Ripley at the start of Aliens, the second one, right? Where she's been through the first harrowing experience and she's having the nightmares, and they eventually convince her to go back out to exterminate the xenomorph. It's like, there's a little something there if they wanted to have him as some kind of overseer, or he's part of another team that's gearing up, but they need something of his expertise, or I don't know. That's the one I would, given what Trachtenberg has done, I'll watch anything Predator he wants to make. And if he thinks he's found a way in, I feel like we've seen enough improbable success stories, whether it was a Top Gun Maverick or whatever, where they've been able to go back to these classic characters and make it work, to where that one, I think they could make it interesting.
Yeah. Commando is a little bit of a different story here.
I don't understand that at all. Of the three, that's the one I'm like, what could John Matrix possibly be doing?
If you saw the first one, he is a one-man army. At this late in the game, he is nowhere near that. I don't know how they make that work. It definitely can't be him shirtless, running around with stripes on his face, shooting, it just can't be. So I don't know.
I had one
about
bad
that
idea
one.
for this.
Okay.
I had one bad idea for this because you're right. Commando to me is it's like Arnold playing AAA baseball before he becomes a Hall of Famer. Like if you watch that movie, it's very entertaining, but it's very silly. You can almost feel him test driving the one-liners. Like, what can I get away with? How ridiculous can I say this and then by the time you get to Predator and Total Recall, he's perfected it, right? He's like, my bad idea is that the movie actually centers on the Alyssa Milano character all grown up, and she goes to rescue him.
Yeah. But that, to me, we know how we feel, not how we feel, but
that's why it's a bad idea.
The track record of female-led, the believability of it.
Yes.
Supergirl is a different story, but it seems like they are faltering in the belief that they can make that work.
But at least she has a reason to have those powers, so you don't question why she can swing a tank around.
Yes.
Alyssa Milano, that character growing up to be a commando on her own, and now having to, I'm just making this up, but like rescue an 80-year-old father who's still an intelligence officer, but now is caught in some.
Or maybe he had another kid in between, and had, you know what I'm saying, with the girl.
But I feel like a movie like that,
and it's Aaron Pierre. That's interesting. That's interesting, Brian. That's interesting.
So we need a third character to make this work. And then hopefully we don't have would we have the son of the Australian guy who played Bennett, the bad guy, the crazy but I think the problem with that movie is is so reliant on his muscles and his look and his, over the top weaponry that, like, I wouldn't, if he's even in the movie, more so than Predator, aren't you waiting 90 minutes to just see him get into the camo one more time, no matter how old that's a weird thing of, like, if he doesn't do it, I don't know how the movie works. I would just be like, stay away. If I'm him, I would be like, let's put it this way.
Predator.
I would honestly be like calling James Cameron up to be like, let's do True Lies 2 long before we do that.
Yeah.
Conan, though, as has been talked about forever, this story actually kind of exists. Howard wrote it. I mean, there's a version of King Conan where he's old and he isn't the great larger-than-life fighter anymore, and he kind of has to drag his carcass off the throne to kind of fight off an enemy. You can do that with another, again, you mentioned like an Aaron Pierre. Back in the day, this was the one thing, there was talk of Triple H maybe was going to be like a son to him. And like, this is another Alan Ritchson, if you want him to be like the son of Conan, and then Conan has to be involved, and like you still get the charisma of Arnold, but you no longer have to rely on him as the primary sword in the mission. I could see it. The only problem is that, like, is this a big project? This feels like a streaming movie to me.
Yeah.
It's just like, are you really going to be able to make 400, 300 million global off of this? I don't know if there's a market for that.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's like Predator's got some heat to it right now. I feel like you could make a Predator movie and build on the success of Badlands and be like, it's a hit. Conan, I think you have to do is streaming, and I don't know. I don't know if that's something that, maybe you do it as a TV show. Maybe that's the way to do it. See if you can do it as like a 6-episode, 8-episode, single limited series. Maybe that's the way to do it, and it could be interesting.
Yeah.
But.
And what we're watching, Brian, you saw War Machine. What did you think?
Speaking of Schwarzenegger and Alan Ritchson, I have seen Alan Ritchson's attempt to make a version of Predator now, which is War Machine. That's
what I thought when I saw it. I was like,
that's what it is. It's exactly what it is. A modern riff on Predator with maybe like a whiff of Transformers thrown in there.
Okay.
But the premise is, you have a larger than life soldier in Ritchson, although they make one interesting choice about the character, which I wanted to just mention, who, has a trauma, and he winds up in sort of ranger training. And at the end of the training, he and sort of the last remaining candidates for the program are sent on what they think is kind of like a war games mission. And it turns out to, in fact, be something of an alien invasion, where there's an extraterrestrial machine that's been downed, and they quickly realize that they're up against this sort of like unstoppable force in the wilderness. And they don't have real weapons because it's like a training exercise. So they have like guns that shoot blanks and all this sort of stuff. I think the things that I like about it are, and reviews are decent. I think the things that I like about it are there's a very good recognition by Netflix of, again, this is not a theatrical movie. This is a very good hour and 45 minutes that you can spend at home watching big explosions and things that clearly have budget behind them. And you can watch Alan Ritchson be pretty charismatic with a couple of like leads co-stars that you probably like are like, hey, I've seen that person before, but you wouldn't really like know the name of the actor. There's a lot of action. I mean, once they uncork it, it's probably like an hour straight of like a running chase and firefight. And, you know, I think at that point you suspend your disbelief a little bit. It's not as, and I'll get to one of the big weaknesses, it's not as meticulous as Predator in the sense of like Predator, I think because they went down into the actual jungle and shot that. There is a realism to that you feel in that movie that this movie never really gets to. Yeah. But I don't think it's supposed to. And Ritchson is very good. I think, and he's kind of showing that like he knows how to use his take my Reacher character at center, move it 10% this way, move it 10% that way, and I can use that to be a little funnier, a little more serious, a little more tortured, and it works for me. So I liked it. It's like I said, I recommend it. It's a streaming movie, so I would just recommend that you take a few hours to watch it. I don't think it rises anywhere to the heights of, you know, Predator. Make no mistake. This is not getting anywhere close to that. I think there's two main reasons it fails, and neither of which is going to be surprising to anyone. Number one is I didn't really love the machine. It's a choice that they make to make this like a robot, basically. And it looks like a robot from the movie Battleship, to be honest. Remember that movie?
Okay. Yeah.
So it has a lot of firepower and a lot of lights and a lot of like movement, but like I just didn't love it. Just didn't have the coolness factor for me.
Yeah.
I think it made me appreciate Kevin Peter Hall and the Predator creature all the more because the creature kind of had a presence and a personality and a look and a feel that like this lost because it simply was a CGI machine and you knew it was the whole time. And the second is, I have to be honest, I prefer the Predator approach of we are going to take the baddest team of soldiers around. We're going to show you why they are the absolute best at what they do. And then we're going to overmatch those guys versus we're going to take a bunch of trainees and one super soldier and send them up. That to me didn't work. I was like, these guys are kind of rookies, except for Alan Ritchson. And I'm like, there's no believability that they would last 2 seconds against this thing. And a lot of them don't, you know, as you can, I'm not spoiling a lot to tell you that. But weirdly, like that made me miss the Predator guys all the more because it's like watching the Predator take out Jesse Ventura and Sonny Landham and Carl Weathers. Like there's just a lot more impact versus, hey, this dude's been in training for 8 weeks and he doesn't even have a working firearm. It's like, well, yeah, he's just cannon fodder, you know. So that didn't totally work for me. But at the end of the day, I was amused and entertained, and I was like, oh, I'm glad this exists. I'm glad I didn't have to go to the theater to see it. I'm glad Ritchson did it. It looks okay. Like it looks nice. It looks like they spent some money. There's some good action in it. And I like that he's hitting the beats, but it's kind of just okay is what I would say. Like if you're asking me, it's like a 2 to 2.5 star, like very like enjoyable, but then forgettable. Don't really need to go back to it. Action movie.
I'm gonna definitely check it out. What I've been watching is the entire 1990, I don't know what year it came out, Spider-Man cartoon on Fox.
Ooh.
I've been watching I finished it today. I started it over the weekend. I just binged it. One thing I can say, there's a lot of cameos in that were very enjoyable to watch. A lot of explosions. Is a very loud show.
Interesting.
But yeah, man, the Spider-Man, to me, that show was really, really well made. And if you haven't seen it or you haven't seen it in a long time, I suggest you try to go back to it and just watch it, and you would probably enjoy it still. So that's what I've been watching.
I am watching one other thing, and it kind of happened randomly because my wife and I always have a couple of shows going, and we kind of had a gap. We had sort of finished up things like Night Agent, and like we were kind of had nothing else to watch. And I said, given the timing, because we're getting the new season on March 24th, I convinced her to try Daredevil to see like,
the
hey,
Netflix one, right?
just to start from the beginning.
Okay.
And say, let's see if you, because it's not really the kind of show she normally would like. And I said, but
Okay.
you know, we got this new season coming. I kind of wanted to revisit it a little bit myself before Born Again hit. And I was like, hey, do you want to watch this with me? And just kind of, she got hooked. So now we're doing the full rewatch. And I have to say, like, I still really enjoy that show, man. Going back to the beginning and kind of explaining to her, like, when we got to like the hallway fight, being like, you don't understand, like these 3 minutes wound up redefining like action television for the next like 10 years. Like people have been copying this thing ever since, you know, and it's still like the violent stuff is not her favorite thing, but she's getting caught up in you know, Vincent D'Onofrio and, you know, and obviously Charlie Cox. And now she's into season 2. We just watched the conversation on the rooftop with Punisher and Daredevil, right? And it's like,
that's the best right there.
She's getting hooked, right? She's getting hooked on it. And I'm like, you know, so like, see, it's
to try, Frank, to try.
You hit them, they get up. I hit them, they stay down.
That scene for me is the best for me. I love season 3 of Daredevil. I think that was perhaps one of the best seasons.
Yes,
season 2, the first half was dope. The hand part was a little bit, I don't know. I'm interested to see what she thinks about the second part of it.
I am too, because I know that like I know the kind of the more ninja supernatural Defenders runway is coming, and it's like we'll see how she deals with it. But like I will say, in the first season, you get the Black Sky, you get Stick. That like, so she was sort of invested in that, maybe because she was like, oh, Scott Glenn, that's cool. Like, you know, she was interested in that. But yeah, I'll see. But you're right. It's just remembering those scenes, those individual moments. Like, man, this show was good. Like, and so I don't know. We'll see if Born Again season 2 can recapture that magic. But
that is the story right there.
Yeah.
That is the subject of conversation when it does come out on whether or not, because they brought back everybody to do this.
And we heard Finn Jones finally might be getting in the door.
His volume 5 made them say, yes, you've earned it. And what I mean by that is we had a running joke that Finn Jones really wanted to come back.
Oh, he did.
So we said in order for him to earn it, he has to fight people in the streets to prove himself, because Iron Fist is a martial. This is the thing, man. Martial arts has lost its flair in movies and action, because everybody seems to be able to do it, right? Everybody can fight nowadays, right?
And I think the choreography has gotten a little more boilerplate. People seemingly are wanting the same thing over. Like when you watch that and then you go watch early Jackie Chan or Enter the Dragon, you're kind of like, these people are doing different things. Like there's not even like the same activity that's happening. But nowadays it feels like everyone wants the same look in what they call martial arts, which is a little bit of a shame. So.
Yeah. But Daredevil did a hell of a job.
So that's what I remember. See, when I go back to season 1 in particular, that's what I feel I really hope Born Again remembers, is that this guy, and the thing is, in season 3, they explain why it changes. But in season 1, he is every bit as much a ninja-style acrobat as he is a slugger and a boxer like his dad. That's the beauty of the style, is that he is that hybrid.
Yeah.
In season 3, he's much more of a brawler, but they explain why he's that. It fits that season. But then when we went to Born Again, I feel like he actually ought to be recapturing more of his martial arts magic, and it kind of didn't. And so I'm really hoping in season 2, if he's in the black suit, and I hope he's getting back, because he does some flipping moves in season 1 where my wife was like, that's impressive. That's really cool looking. I'm like, yeah, that's a distinctive style to how he fights. Yeah. So.
Well, yeah, let us know in the comment section below what you guys think of this episode of The Void. Dawn of the Jedi is done, which is again an unfortunate thing, but I understand why they did it. But still, that's something I think you at this stage you go for it. You gotta go for it, right? Because it's like, what else are you gonna give me? More of the same, or more of what Filoni wants us to see? I don't know if Man, I'm telling you, Mando Grogu situation is going to be very interesting to talk about. Terrence Howard, sometimes you just gotta, take it. Sometimes you just gotta take it, keep your mouth shut, and be like, okay, thank you for telling me, and that's it. Don't threaten nobody. Are we still up to seeing Denzel playing Denzel? I don't know. If he can somehow pull off a performance that doesn't remind us, I mean, it's Denzel, so how it's a difficult task. Arnold coming back for possibly one out of the three here.
I agree. I think that's probably the right line, is he does one of the three.
Yeah.
And I think Predator is the most likely of the three.
Yes. And yeah, check out War Machine. I'm definitely going to check it out. Because I want to see Anna Ritchson and stuff, man. This guy, he reminds me of Lee Majors, the modern day Lee Majors.
Interesting.
You know who that is, right?
It's the $6 Million Man.
Yeah, yo. So yeah, let us know in the comment section below what you guys think. And remember, if you haven't heard of anyone else, you heard it here first on the Nerd Gen Report.